Okay, our next presenter is Annie Lobert, who is a survivor of more than a decade of sex trafficking, working as a prostituted high-class escort in Hawaii, Minneapolis, and Las Vegas. Annie's mission was to go back and reach the ladies she had left behind, who are working in Las Vegas as prostitutes or sex trafficking victims. What started as a pioneering grassroots outreach to sex workers soon became a nonprofit whose focus was to hook, outreach, help, housing, heal, restore. In 2005, became Hookers for Jesus. Annie is currently writing a book about her personal real-life story of sex trafficking in Las Vegas and how the sex industry almost ended her life. Annie continues to reach out to girls and women and is actively partnering with additional ministries in an effort to end human sex trafficking. Annie has never lost sight of the vision God gave her to reach people for Him. Please welcome Annie Lobert to the stage.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Congo Justice, for inviting me. I got the invitation, I don't think, about a month and a half ago, and I've been communicating with a wonderful lady here, and I'm not saying your name right. Idea. I called her Ida earlier, so excuse me for that. But this is such a great cause. I'm just overwhelmed at just the presenters and the love that they're giving and just explaining what atrocity this is that's happening in our own city. I moved here in 1987 for the sole purpose of selling my body. And I just want to go in a really, probably a fast, quick little story about how it happened to me. When I was growing up, I lived in a small little city called Minneapolis. And I know that there's a lot of girls in Las Vegas that are still trafficked from Minneapolis. And I was searching for love in all the wrong places, basically. And I don't come from a broken home where I tried to run away. My parents are still together. They've been married about 47 years. I come from a kind of a normal family. Went to church growing up. Never was exposed to gangs. I was never exposed to prostitution at a young age. But I would say a victim of culture and letting the culture surround me and embrace me. And I think when we have such an influential society today, especially with the internet, with the reality shows that teach women to show flesh is the way to go and to become famous or to become successful, it's just another form of selling our body. Am I right or wrong? Right? And I'm not going to call out any famous shows right now that are doing that, but there's so many. Just turn on your television, you can figure it out. There's not enough good shows about helping people overcome brokenness in their lives. And there's not enough shows about teaching women that they're not objects, or teaching men on the other end of the spectrum that we're not objects to be sold and purchased. So it started at a young age with me because I wanted to feel loved. I grew up in a family where my father was a strict disciplinary person. He was in the military. We moved around 7 different times. I went to 7 different schools. So I always had to go into school, new schools, and make new friends. And I eventually did graduate from school from a Wisconsin high school, Frederick, Wisconsin. Probably none of you have ever heard of it. But it was a real small town. There were 2 scholarships given away at that time. There was 48 kids in our class. So I went back to Minneapolis to just sow my oats and sow my roots or whatever, so to speak, try to go to college, got 3 jobs, got overworked. Anything out of balance will kill you, okay? I had 3 jobs, got a fake ID. I was wanting to go out to the clubs and just relax, go to ladies' night. And I think this is where a lot of the girls, even underage ones, they have fake IDs and they go out to the clubs. And this is what I did with me and my girlfriend. And one night we were going to this club and we were sitting there at the bar and these guys walk in, straight out of television this seemed like at the time. They had mink coats on, nice furs, walked in and said, "Hey, can I buy you a drink?" And of course, us girls, we didn't have a lot of money. And I was making $3.47 an hour at that time. And in the 80s, that's not even a lot of money back then. But that was like, of course I want to have you buy me a drink. I don't have any money. So one of the guys starts dating my girlfriend. I go back to work. She calls me up, and she's in Hawaii. I had never been to Hawaii. So when she asked me to go, it was such an easy yes. Come on, going to a tropical island. The last thing I had ever seen was either National Geographic on television, you know, taking pictures of the fish and the sharks in the water, or watching Fantasy Island, this famous show from the 70s and 80s, with this little short guy named Tattoo. Da plane. Anyone ever seen that show? Yeah. Well, I wanted to be on that island, okay? Raised in Disneyland, basically. Watched at 7 o'clock every Sunday night. That was my television. There was no cable back then. So I had this fantasy about this man that would rescue me. And so I went to Hawaii, and the first night that I worked, I was in Waikiki Beach. My girlfriend taught me how to sell myself. It was very easy for me because I was very, very angry at my father, for one thing. I also wanted to be successful in my life. I was a product of a generation that read Cosmo, Mademoiselle, and religiously watched MTV. I got my worth and value from what I looked like and how I could work what I had, which was just this. Inside of me was dying, though. I wanted to be noticed. I wanted to be loved. And a lot of the girls that get into this that do not get kidnapped right away are introduced by a boyfriend. So I learned how to sell my body, went back to Minnesota, didn't have a pimp, and started working in an exotic dance club. And this guy walked in one day, Denzel Washington, verbatim. He was my rescuer. He was my knight in shining armor. And he walked up to the stage and gave me all this money, bought me roses, bought me clothes, told me I was beautiful. It's called the grooming stage with sex trafficking. And even though I didn't explain to him what I was doing, I noticed what he was doing, and I'm a person that loves to help people. I always want to fix someone, and of course I thought I could fix him. He was a drug dealer. I didn't like it. I noticed that the police were following him, so my girlfriend had moved to Las Vegas by then. I had quit all 3 of my jobs. I had put the thought of college on the back burner, but I did want to make money for college, and I did want to get an education with arts and music. And so I got this idea to come to Las Vegas, and I finally told the news to my boyfriend, which I was in love with. We were supposed to get married. I told him I was a prostitute, and he told me, "That's really intelligent of you." I was like, "Look, I'm against pimps, can't stand them, can't stand Too Short. I'm against anything that, you know, embodies or embraces exploitation, because I am woman, hear me roar. I'm going to make my own money. No one's going to take advantage of me." I made sure that he knew that before we left. But when we got down to Las Vegas, the first night that I signed up for the escort service, I went on about 3 calls. I brought home a big wad of money. I set it on the counter. And the last time I had heard this word in any vocabulary or any form of a song was from Too Short, and there was a song that he talks about, break yourself, you better break yourself. And my pimp told me to break myself. And I looked at him like he was crazy because I realized he's using the language from that song. And he pulled me out to the back of the house and proceeded to beat me ruthlessly, broke my ribs, shoved my face in dog feces, and told me, "This is pimpin', B. This is what you're in now, and you're not getting out." And I basically was shocked. I was screaming. My girlfriend says, "I'm calling the cops." Well, obviously, I didn't stay with him. I left, but he sweet-talked me back. He got me roses. Said he'd never do it again. Said he never meant it. Said that, you know, he really loved me and that we could work it out somehow. But the rule was this, is that I was going to hand him every single dollar I made. And I was going to embrace the underage girls he was bringing, even though they had fake IDs. And I was going to be his bottom girl. And that, in the terms of the game, is a girl that basically watches over the stable when her pimp's out of town, watches over it when he's there. And that means she watches over all the other girls, and she makes sure that they're lined up right, that they're getting their trap, which is their money. And it's a very, very tall responsibility, because if you mess up, you get beat the most. Basically, I lived day to day with guns to my head. He told me he knew where my family lived, and I took that very seriously. He had gotten out of jail for attempted murder against a girl that he had tried to kill. And I didn't know it. The police actually had to tell me this story, and I was in shock. You don't tell your boyfriend, give me your arrest record. Let me see what you're in danger for or what you've been arrested for. And so I was such a trusting person back then. I wanted to believe the best. And here's the serious part about a lot of these women and girls' relationships with their quote-unquote boyfriend, sex traffickers, is that they're in love with them. And it's so hard to understand that if you've never been in an abusive relationship, that there is something inside of you that wants to believe your pimp or your boyfriend or your trafficker, that he'll never hit you again. That one day you'll both get out of this game in this industry. One day you'll graduate and you'll be squares. And one day he'll marry you. One day you'll have that family that you've always dreamed of, that you've read in books, that you've seen on television. And they sell you the dream. They give you this golden carrot and they wag it over you and they tell you, if you jump this far, if you jump across this chasm, you'll get what we're looking for. And a lot of the girls believe that. And that's why a lot of the girls, and like I did myself, I went back to him over and over and over after he almost killed me. I can't even count on my hands how many times. One of his favorite things he would do is he would rape me, rape the other girls, and he would asphyxiate us, where we would be left for dead. And he would call me on my cell phone and say, "You're still alive? Did you learn your lesson? Are you going to talk to that police officer again?" And so this is the lifestyle that a lot of the girls are in Las Vegas. And on the outward appearance, you will see a girl smiling. You'll see her walking through the casino, rushing to her hotel to go get that money for her pimp. And you might stop her and say, "Are you okay?" And she'll lie to you with a smile on her face and say, "I love what I do." She'll tell all her clients, all her tricks, all her Johns, that she loves doing this because she's going to college. She has a dream to fulfill. She'll convince the trick to call her again and again and again because he's helping her with her dream, right? So it justifies the trick buying sex from the young women and the young ladies. And that's what I told all my clients. I'm going to college. I don't have a pimp. I'm against pimps. But the entire time, I'm coming home with $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, and I'm handing it over to my daddy, my pimp, because I love him, but also because if I don't hand it over to him, I know I will not live to see another day. Or the people I know that are closest to me, that I love with all my heart, might not see to live another day. And this is what the girls live in Las Vegas. No, it's not exactly like Congo justice in Africa, but the same game applies. It's violence, justified violence to meet an end of lust, greed, and sex and perversion, to control people. I call it the pimp mafia because it's an underground circuit. A lot of people don't know, and I'm so glad that tonight is such a great, beautiful night of awareness because there's people living next door to you probably, or in your neighborhood that you don't know, that are being trafficked, that you might see driving a fancy car or wearing a beautiful, let's say, Chanel outfit with a Louis Vuitton purse, and they're snapping their gum and they got their hair bleached and they look great on the outside and they're going to the tanning bed or whatever they're doing and they look like they're happy in their life, but actually they have a pimp and they're paying him. And that's who I was. And so eventually, I did get out of the industry, believe it or not, from a pretty woman type of rescue. I had a client that saw me going through HELL, and he had enough guts to ask me, you know, "I really want to help you. I just think you're destroying your life." I had gotten on drugs on the 10th year that I was doing this. I got on cocaine. A lot of the women that do this end up with post-traumatic stress disorder. 70% or more, it's statistics. That's what we know of anyway, because honestly, a lot of girls don't talk. They're afraid that their captor is going to come after them. They're afraid they're going to be snuffed out, so to speak. I've had 13 friends in this industry that have died so far. From knowing girls from 1987 all the way fast forward to now. That's how many friends I've lost. And I'm not happy about it. And if I could line them up on stage right now to tell you what happened to them, I would, but I have to be their voice right now. You're their voice to listen to stories like ours of victims that have become overcomers, that are alive today, to help the women that have been so abused and taken from a normal life and turned into sex slaves for the purpose of greed and lust. Las Vegas is the hub. I don't care what anyone else tells you. It's going on here. Everyone is on the take, and I'm not talking about the police department, because the police department and the FBI is really being a great help right now. But the casinos, don't be fooled. I paid off concierges, bartenders, security officers to let me through to make my money, okay? We have a big problem. By the way, the pimps are downstairs in the casinos gambling the money that we make, and the casinos are very happy about it. Sorry, I'm being honest, okay? I've seen it. My pimp used to gamble all the money away at the craps tables. He had a craps problem, okay? So this is a very, very serious issue, and if we don't have the voice for the women that are being trafficked, nothing's going to change. Laws need to change. Our community needs to rise up, come together, become unified. We all need to work together, because if this problem continues, our city right now is in a war zone. It's going to only get worse. And so what ended up happening to me, I'm just going to fast forward to the end, is I finally got out of the industry, but I started a business with my friend and worked on cars, and we became very successful in a corporate business, but I didn't have any self-worth still. I hid behind this mask of post-traumatic stress disorder. And I ended up losing our business with my partner and started doing drugs again. I was 3 years sober, 3 years no prostitution. But again, we always go back to our first initial thing that got us in the bad position we were in. I was abused when I was 8 years old, so I'm still going back to that bitterness and not thinking I'm good enough to do anything right. I thought about my prostitution. I thought about how I walked away from these two different pimps I was with that had nothing to show for it. And I thought about the corporate world, how I was failing at it. And I became so devastated that I started doing drugs again. And I started going back down to that strip. Ended up becoming homeless, sold my car for drugs. Didn't have the healing that I really, truly needed. And one night, I took it too far, and I started doing coke, and I just wanted to get high and just make everything disappear, because at this point in my life, I was in my early 30s, and I felt like such a failure, not realizing that even though I made the choice, that a lot of these things that happened to me was the abuses of different men that took advantage of me. But I blamed myself. I had a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of fear. Never thought I could make anything out of my life. And so that night, I overdosed on cocaine, had a heart attack, and I did all the drugs. If you ever heard of what happened to Whitney Houston recently, the toxicology reports came back, and every drug that she did, I was on that night. I was on Benadryl, I was on Xanax, I was on cocaine, alcohol. And I OD'd, and that night I said a prayer, because I was raised in church. And I said, God, if you just help me get out of this somehow, I will never sell my body again. I will never do drugs again. And I will make sure that I can help others that are in my predicament right now. And he came through with it. And I went to the hospital. I got better. A couple months went by. I started watching television. I got a Bible. And I started going to church in 2005. And in 2005, I started to reach out to the women on the strip. And that's when Hookers for Jesus was born. And that turned into a grassroots outreach of girls coming to church, girls coming to get healing, get counseling, and that eventually I had nowhere to put the girls. I started putting them in hotels and in my own personal home. And my roommates got kind of mad at me because I was living in a 10 by 10 little rented room at that time, wasn't married yet. My husband's here tonight. Where is he? He's right there. And never been married before. And one of the churches I was involved with at the time offered us to use a house for the program I designed called Destiny House. And so we brought girls into the house. I was the house mother. That was pretty fun, actually. I learned so much. I love being a mama son to the girls. I love being a guide to the women because I've been there and I understand. And eventually I met Oz, and we got married, and finally, like, my dream life was fulfilled. I had a purpose in my life. And so fast forward, right now, Hookers for Jesus, we're looking for another home, and we're still doing mentoring, we're still doing case management, we're still doing outreaches, and we're going to start another support group starting up third week of April called Ladies of Destiny for women that have been trafficked or women that have been sexually abused, that they can come weekly at 6:30 and just, hear other women's stories and hear a good teaching, Bible-based teaching about how much God loves us. Because, see, this was an identity crisis with me. I did not know that God loved me. And because of that, I sold myself. And see, if we can get that root issue of not being loved taken care of in many of the women's lives, healing starts. It empowers them to finally heal, get set free, and eventually do what we're all doing. reaching back out to the community where they were trafficked at. And that's what Hooker Jesus hopes to do. We hope to raise up other women like us to start more organizations and more awareness, and maybe in other states, start destiny houses all over the world, because there needs to be a safe place for girls, for women, for ladies to come when they've been abused. And there needs to be a time of healing. So I just want to thank everyone for tonight for letting me share, and God bless you all, and thank you for being here and being part of the awareness of this event tonight. God bless you all.